Recording.
Hey guys.
Hi.
Welcome back to Adventures of Carly-Ann's podcast, Carly-Ann's Corner. I'm Adrienne.
And I am Carl. This is episode 5032. And today we have a special guest.
It's Rachel. I'm in the house, in their corner.
In their corner.
It's actually called Adria Carolina Chell's corner today.
Oh,
Zai.
that's a weird corner.
I don't want to be in that corner. That sounds like a really weird corner.
But so we're here to talk about our trip, recent trip to Vietnam.
Mm-hmm. We went to Hanoi, Vietnam, which is the north side, old capital, in October.
October, yeah.
And it was our second time, Carl and my second time visiting that country and specifically that city, but Rachel's first.
Mm-hmm.
And we were super excited to share our experiences and our favorite things with her.
Mm-hmm.
And now she's going to share her favorite thing.
Yeah.
And actually, to preface it, before we actually went on the trip, we were all determining where we would want to go. And the way that Carl proposed Vietnam to me, do you remember it, Carl?
What did I say?
So
How terrible was it?
So he was like, okay, so there might be some scams. It's very much riskier and all of these like negative things.
Yeah.
And he goes, but it'll be a great experience. So the next thing I said was, I'm down. Scams, risky.
Now I remember it. Now, because we were like, it was down to like Malaysia
Yes.
or Vietnam. And let me just say that Vietnam is one of my favorite places before I say any of this stuff.
Let me preface the preface by saying,
Let me pre-preface. But so it was between the two, and I told her that Malaysia, there's not a big language barrier there. A lot of
Yes,
people speak
that's what you're saying.
English, and it is maybe a tad bit safer. I don't know, in Malaysia, so it's a place where she can solo travel to. It's easier and things to get around, blah, 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 blah. Vietnam, though, when I said, well, Vietnam, there's a lot of culture. There's this and that. Sure, it's a little more dangerous. You might get hit by a car. You won't really understand anybody.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
And I said down.
Yeah,
Down,
exactly.
let's go.
And she was down to go because, at least she would be there with us too.
Yeah.
So... And that's the podcast. No, I'm just kidding.
So
That's
most
Carl's.
memorable
Most
moment.
memorable. Yeah.
Do you guys want to start with it?
no, you start.
Okay, because I'm the guest.
Yeah.
When I told people about Vietnam, when I came home after the trip, the one thing that I always spoke about was the streets.
Mm-hmm.
It was all about the streets just because it was such a culture shock for me. I have Filipino family. I've only gone to the Philippines once, but the way I described it, my
Filipino?
my
What country is
Filipino
that?
family said
Oh.
it was actually similar. That the streets are similar. But
Then in the Philippines?
that's what my family said. I don't know
no, it's
what
not.
province they're in,
No, definitely not.
but you have all these cars kind of coming by, and they don't have really a stoplight for you to walk or a cross for you to walk, and you literally just have to go. So I mean, I don't know if you guys saw it, but I was holding my breath the first couple of days, and I was just terrified just because you have all these cars coming at you. In America, you're gonna get hit. You are gonna get hit.
Yeah.
But there, they actually go around you. And they respect the pedestrians there.
By cars, she means scooters. There's more scooters than cars. It's not really
Cars, all these
people
cars.
is like imagination is like, holy shit.
Like a leapfrog.
Like hell
With all the
look like
cars
that.
go back, go
But
forward.
it is a leapfrog.
Yeah.
Yeah. But like when I was in the Philippines though, I mean, there's so much traffic there that, yeah, sure, you could just walk because no one's moving because of the traffic.
So it's a little
But
different.
man, this is moving traffic in
Yeah.
Vietnam. And that I think that stuff, like you said, it terrifies me, but at the same time, it's what makes like Vietnam for me. You know what I mean? Like that's part of it. And
It's a culture.
yeah, and I like to see like people, if I bring other people or my family there, like I'm just going to tell them, hey, cross the street.
Let's see what they do.
Without having to show them how or whatever. I'm just going to be like, cross the street. And I'm just going to wait patiently for them to do it. Because I know they're gonna wait until there's a clearing, and
Well,
there's never a clearing.
You saw when we were around other tourists, because Vietnam was a lot of tourists there. They had a lot of tourists there.
Yeah.
So you can see when people weren't comfortable, they were looking at the traffic and almost like hesitantly going, but coming back, going, coming back.
Yeah. That was actually the culture shock coming from Laos to Vietnam and seeing that many tourists, right?
Yeah.
But it is funny though. So I mean, it's not posted yet, but we are going to be posting a video on kind of how to cross the street.
Oh, that's cool.
Or give some tips.
Yeah.
Some tips. And, there might be footage of Rachel crossing the street there. But
I think also, though, the other thing to describe it, it's not quite Frogger. So because if you play the game Frogger, there's the lanes and the cars follow the lanes. So you can go in between the lanes and it's safe. Vietnam, there's no lanes.
no, yeah.
There's no such thing as
You
lanes.
just, everything, because there's not just scooters, there's also bicycles, right? And then there's also like the rickshaws or the people pulling things. And like everyone's just taking any space available. So there's not gaps in the lane lines. So you're literally trying to weave your way around, the scooters, the bikes, the cars. And, and if you're lucky, there's like other pedestrians to kind of like create a flow pattern for you to follow, or you walk next to someone else who will forge the way for you.
Yeah.
But it's not, it would be like an eel to what a frog is, like you'd have to like slip and slide and constantly move in order to survive versus like hop, stop. Yeah. That's how I would describe it.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah.
I think also at the end of the trip, it was almost like a great accomplishment, right?
Yeah.
Because then we felt so comfortable just walking on the street, and you go to the other sidewalk and you're like, damn, I did it. I did it.
Yeah, but it's not even just that. It's just walking on the sidewalk, right? Or whatever sidewalk there was, and not really stopping at the intersection or when you're about to cross the street, right? Like that shows a ton of confidence. Like the amount of time you have to like look while just before crossing the street kind of tells like how good or like how confident you are with it, right? Most tourists will spend, I mean, if it's their first day, they'll spend 5 minutes, almost 10 minutes trying to cross the street or give up.
Yeah.
Right. But for us, it was just like, one look to one way and then first step.
We don't have time for that. 5 minutes to 10 minutes. We got to eat.
Yeah. If there was room for a foot, we took it. And I think that's like, and I would just sometimes I would take that first step and then I'd look to like the side of you guys, because we form a shoulder to shoulder line, right? Obviously the big wider guys
we're protected by Carl.
Yes.
If you hit anyone, hit him first.
But it was like that's the kind of line you would have to take, right? So that but just that little first step and then just walking, and then we just keep walking. After a while we were just like, oh, that was nothing.
Can we talk about our friend though? Our friend in Vietnam, where he walked the street?
Oh yeah, that was ridiculous. So I really we were about to cross the street with him. Right, we'll introduce him. We'll introduce him when we get there. But because he's a big part, I'm sure he'll take up most of this podcast, because he's just a big part of Vietnam, especially this round for us. It was made it way better than we thought. But anyway, when he crossed the street, I was like, oh, this is my moment to really observe how a local does it. Yeah, that didn't help at all. This fool didn't even look. No. He didn't look. No
and
joke.
There were more cars.
Yeah.
There were more cars in this area that we were at, and literally stepped on the street, was talking to Carl as all the cars are coming.
Yeah, coming the opposite direction of what he was looking. Yeah. And he didn't look. He just went.
Full
And for us, we were just like, we didn't know what the fuck to do, right? We were just, do we just die with him?
Go with the local.
Yeah. We put that trust into him. We were like, he's a local. It should be okay, right? And no, man, that was scary, because I realized halfway into the street, this fool didn't even look.
No, he didn't.
I was like, dude, you didn't even look.
But I think, and I think that really, going back to Rachel saying that's what you think of when you think of Vietnam, and again also Carl being this is the experience to have in Vietnam. And I think I left really thinking that the way crossing the street and traffic in general and moving in Vietnam, that is the absolute analogy or reflection of the Vietnamese way,
Mm-hmm.
where like things can be like, it's about remaining fluid, right?
Mhm.
And this is something we talked to Duke about too, is like this, it's about being flexible. Like people will do stuff and you're not going to get mad about them for doing it.
Yeah.
You know, like someone may cut you off. You're not going to get mad about it. You're just going to go around,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or you're going to slow down and people will adapt and move. And, you know, so it's not about, oh, whose turn is it? Or I'm going to like,
Mm-hmm.
it's not structure, right? Like lives and time and schedules are not as structured there. And that's kind of annoying for some people, but that's like the way of life there. And, you know, so you can be like, oh, it's so noisy. People are like, oh, it's so noisy. Like, oh, the honking or the thing. But it's not anger. It's like literally people just like doing their thing and moving on.
Mm-hmm.
Like no one's stopping to have road rage. We saw people crash. You know,
We saw
like
one crash.
sorry,
We saw
One
one.
lady, yeah.
one, and that was the first time we've ever seen.
Yeah.
And it was like a bicycle and a scooter, and that was, you know, because anyways. But you know, again, like people stopped for a moment and then traffic continued, and like the people immediately there, like, you know, she got up and it was fine, and then everything just kept moving on. Like
There was no yelling. There was no
Yeah.
yelling. It was just genuine like, are you
Okay.
okay? You're okay.
Yeah.
Continue.
Help her up.
All right, let's go.
And then boom.
yeah.
She was off.
Done deal.
Yeah. It was
Yeah.
an old lady on a bicycle too. And it was
I
just
know.
like,
I was worried. I was like, oh shit! I caused the commotion.
literally, we're gonna close up on that face that Rachel just made.
Oh shit!
Yeah, it's exactly her face. But I think a lot of people in America, I guess, just generally hate Asian drivers. Let's just put that out there, right? Like, it's just a thing. People are like, "Oh, damn Asian drivers, they can't drive." Man,
Like a stereotype.
go
yeah.
go visit Vietnam. See who
Yeah.
can't drive. Like,
Yeah.
trust me. See who can't drive, and then you try to fucking like rent a scooter and try to drive that. You can't. If you look at it, if you watch how they drive and you watch the flow of traffic, it's chaotic. But I've never seen.
But it's a different type of chaos, because when I think of the word chaos, I think so hectic and out of control.
It is.
flashing, but
It
it's
is.
not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is very hectic for me to watch.
Uh-huh.
But at the same time, it's like when you look at it and stare at that like traffic for so long, then you start to pick up like the pattern.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I get it now. Like, I get it.
Mm.
But then if you're just like looking at a glance, you're just like, whoa, this is nuts. This is this is too much for me. This is overwhelming, which I thought to begin with, Vietnam would be crazy overwhelming for like you. When
Yeah,
you
yeah.
went.
And it was a little
was,
bit in
yeah,
the beginning.
yeah.
Yeah.
And so like, I just made sure that it's like, okay, well, I'm not super overwhelmed, but it is like terrifying for me still. And so it's like, oh, just can't show it. Or, you know, we can't show it. Me and Adrian can't show it to make Rachel more comfortable. You know,
You felt that same way too, Adrian?
No, not necessarily. I didn't feel
because
responsible
It's
to
funny. I could see that Carl was nervous, but I could see that he was trying not to show it for me, though.
yeah. So, yeah, and I think like Asians here get a bad rap for like driving, and it kind of sucks. But it's like, go to anywhere in Asia, like their traffic, the way they drive is just so crazy. It's like you wouldn't believe. No other American would ever try to drive.
I mean,
there.
it's not just Asian too. I mean, we've been to Morocco. We know, like in South America too, like Brazil. Like everybody drives. It's less rigid. It's less about the rules. But that's like funny that, you know, in America or a lot of European, you know, Western cultures, you're like, oh, well, you're not following the rule. So, you know, and technically they're not even like rules. Like when people cut you off and you get mad, or someone's going too slow in front of
Yeah.
you. You know, like, these are not actually like laws, but you
Yeah.
get mad that someone's wronging you.
Yeah.
And
It's
you
a
take it
very it's a
personal.
personal attack here, right? And then that brings us to
Yeah.
like the honking. Whereas for us
yes.
in America, it's like the purpose of our horn is to literally say "fuck you."
Well, the horn is different. It's like, honk.
Yeah,
And then in Asia, it's like, honk, 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 honk.
yeah, it's literally like that. But it is their traffic language.
Yeah.
It is their way of communicating.
Hey, I'm
It's
here
like-
on your right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like that's what makes it, I feel, safer. Like even in Bali, like when we were like backing out of something, like it's just a double tap on the honk.
Mm-hmm.
You know, bump bump, just to, you know, make people aware we're backing up. And I remember coming back from our long trip where I had tendencies to just double tap on our honker.
Where
Here,
in,
when we
here
came
in America.
home,
Okay.
I was like, oh, we're reversing. And I was just like, reverse, turn the angle, reverse, bump, bump. I was like, wait, I'm in America. Someone
What am I doing?
Someone thinks I just flipped
No,
them
I'm not
off.
mad at you, I swear.
I'm
just backing
I'm
up.
coming out. That's fine. Yeah.
Backing up.
So it's just crazy, just the difference in traffic, I guess, or like vehicles in these countries, right? So, yeah, I mean, the biggest tip for crossing the street, let's go back to that real quick. The biggest tip I have is don't try to run it. I see, because
People panic.
People
Oh my
panic
God.
because it's over. Like I said,
I
it's
thought you were just
overwhelming.
joking.
No. People run it because they think they need to beat the traffic.
Yeah.
But it's not it.
We didn't see that there, though.
I saw a
It had to
ton.
have been in your previous trip.
Yeah,
'cause
yeah.
There were no runners.
No, there
Well,
was
there are
one
people who are
family.
like, and then they like rush,
Yeah,
and then you
yeah.
try to
It's not
drag
gonna-
everyone.
They're not running the full like street, but it's like they'll get halfway and then they're so overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, it's coming. And then they'll just do like
Yeah,
2
yeah,
steps, right? But that is not what you want to do because they're moving faster, your movements need to be predictable
Yeah.
so they can go around.
And
Right?
you know, the one thing that you kept saying is that in order to cross the street, you notice that people are actually slowing down.
Correct.
Just because for the drivers, they're anticipating your next move or
Correct.
where you're going to be when they're deciding where to go.
Right.
So if you're going to go, don't look at the traffic, just walk slower.
Just exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because that's what I notice. A lot of like locals, their pace changes once they cross, right? You know, there are a lot of busy locals there, right? There's so many things going on. But as soon as they cross, they may not look, but their pace just like
So, yeah.
like halves.
Yeah.
So that's the best tip I got. Just slow down.
Slow down and keep going too. It's the other thing is you don't want to like backtrack or suddenly stop and then not go anywhere because then people don't know what to do around you.
Yeah.
But if you continue to just like inch forward and you're like making it very obvious, like I'm just trying to go straight, then everyone will slowly, okay, I'm going to go behind you. But if they can't tell if you're going to go forwards or backwards, then that's what's going to cause like the incident potentially.
I honestly feel like they're pretty good at depth perception too, because there are
have to
some,
be.
well, like even on like when they're on the scooter and I'm going straight, they still have the balls to go in front of me, knowing
they
my
know
pace.
how,
Yeah.
And so I was like, man, that's like, I wasn't
That's good depth perception.
No, that's what I thought. I was like, dude, your depth perception was really
timing
good.
also.
Because you're like, you need to like know that your kickstand on your scooter's not going to kill my shin, right?
Yeah.
Like, but it was freaking close and they still went by and I'm like, well, they're not tripping, so I'm not going to trip. So I'll just keep walking. And then the next bike behind them would just go around me to the back. And I'm like, this is crazy.
And I think for us too, especially since we've been on those Scoobies before, we have more. Are they Scoobies?
I don't know. You're
I think
the
that's
only
just
one.
maybe
That's
a
a
brand
Rachel.
or a model. I don't think generally they're called scooters, but yes.
So since we were on those scooter scoopies, we have more of appreciation for it, right? Especially when you're in a standstill, it takes a lot of like core activation to keep that motorized vehicle steady, but then they're all so close to each other too. So you really do have to have it in a structured form in order to drive. But I think we have more of appreciation because we have driven it in when we were out in Bali before.
Yeah.
So I mean
That's the most
that
memorable.
wasn't the most memorable, but that was definitely one thing that I highlighted when I told people about my experience because it was such a culture shock. I think
But we had a couple of friends too, right, from school or from high school that also went previous to like in
Oh, yes,
Vietnam,
that's right.
Did you
For a
talk to
wedding.
them at all about like
I didn't.
You didn't?
No.
Okay, yeah.
But most memorable, gosh. Oh, I mean the most memorable thing, like you guys were saying, was I don't know if it's kind of like a night market, but when they would shut down the streets for the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday,
the weekend,
the walking street.
Yeah.
Is that what it was
That
called?
was literally the only reason why I wanted to go back to Vietnam.
To Hanoi specifically.
To Hanoi. I really like wanted you to experience that.
Yeah, and I think that definitely was the highlight. just because everything is, concentrated in that one area. You have anything that you need. You have the clothing shops, you have the food, and then you have like the culture of the music, which is kind of funny because then there was a concert happening. And, for here in America, you're used to concerts, people dancing and just like enjoying the music. And it's differently enjoyed here. I think it's very much watched and spectated, but I definitely know that I was the only one dancing.
100%.
Yeah.
You were the only one dancing.
Yeah.
But that's the crazy thing though. Like that was such a big stage.
Yeah,
that was huge
huge.
stage, right? That's like a main stage at some festival, right? That's every weekend. Like I kept telling myself that when we were like just chilling there watching, I forgot their name, but
You guys looked it up after
it's like
too.
my something and Tom or something. I don't know. But I think Tom is shrimp. I don't know.
Maybe she's called a shrimp band.
I don't know. But that stage was so huge, and I'm just like, I can't believe they do this every weekend.
But also, it's free.
Yeah,
Free 99.
Yeah. So the first time we went, or like our year-long trip, like there was 3 stages.
Oh God.
So there was one big stage, and then like at the corners there were different size. There were like 2 other smaller stages, right? But this time when we went, there was a book fair,
Yes, yes, that's
right? Which is kind of cool. Like there's just different things that go on, and I think, I think seeing that, like, man, it makes me feel like really sad for here because I don't ever feel that kind of community here, that sense of community here. You know what I mean? Like a whole like street around a lake closes down so that families, kids, whoever can come together, eat food, walk around a lake, and just enjoy the weekend together, like a true weekend, right? Over here, we're always excited for the weekend, but then like we blink and we're like, oh, I wish it was the weekend again. Like, oh no, it's the weekday tomorrow. I gotta work, But over there, it's like, man, I just feel like it's a nonstop party, to be honest.
Strong sense of community.
100%. Yeah. So
That kind of reminded me of that. I forgot what movie we were watching, but it was about a European city though. And it was like needing a city center. Like there needs to be a central area. And that's what roots people and a community. And I think for the US is we don't really have that because we're such a like spread out, large land, big space. You don't really have city centers. And like the closest you would get, I guess, is like downtown. But it's not really the same because like a downtown is like, oh, like shops and restaurants. It's not like where a community like lives necessarily. So I don't know. I was starting to like kind of wonder if that's a little bit indicative, like why we're such a fiercely independent culture, and then we don't have that sense of like always wanting to.
Well, before even experiencing like Hanoi like that, like I always just thought we never felt that because we're always we're in Hayward, whereas you got to go to San Francisco. I always thought this is it's such a huge city, Bay Area or cities, right? But like Hanoi's huge. Hanoi's not like a small city, so I feel like it's very similar to like our little setup we have here, and like with all these like Silicon Valley, us, East Bay, blah blah blah, and the fact that they all just come together. I'm any country or any city that like does that. I'm very like, I just love automatically.
Yeah.
It's an automatic like, oh, I would rather live here than home.
Yeah. And you said that. You said something about this is the place that you would live
I would.
in.
Yeah. I
for
could
this
see,
purpose, right?
because of the feeling it gives me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Just like that. Like just how I appreciate so much Christmas markets in Europe. Because I mean we don't have that here. What do we have? You've been to the San Jose one, the Christmas in the Park.
Oh, sorry.
No,
I thought it was
626.
night festival.
No, but then that's like once a year, right?
Yeah.
That's like a weekend once a year. 626,
not like a weekly
right?
thing.
No, not at all, right? But then you have like holiday specific ones, which is like Christmas in the Park, or in the San Jose and San Francisco, where they have like this ice skating and stuff like that. But in Europe, I think they're already out now. Is these Christmas markets? Have you experienced them at all?
I'll be going in 2 weeks.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, she's going to Brussels and Paris. So if anyone wants to see her,
I'll be there. Check
She's
me
there.
out.
She'll be the very loud one. No, but yeah, like that like sense of community where people
Yeah.
just come around. Like, I don't understand why we don't have that. All this, I swear to God, in every podcast, I'm always complaining about America.
Yes.
Like I'm
No,
surprised.
let's go back to how great Vietnam is.
I'm surprised. No, I'm surprised that no one.
It's just 'cause no one
yet-
watches our
Yeah, we
podcast.
only have like 42 views so far. So
43, my mom after
Oh,
this.
yeah. But like when we get more views, I'm sure I'll get these comments where it's like, yo, just go back to your country. Bitch, I'm from America. But anyway, no, like we always talk about like united, whatever we stand, United States, this and that. There's nothing about this country that's united, I feel, right? From top to bottom, I don't feel there's nothing about it. And I complain about that a lot. And like there are these countries out there, Europe, Vietnam, that are much older than America, that have like they have this community and like they make sure that their own people are happy. And I feel like that's where we lack. We don't necessarily make sure our own like people are happy and like interact with each other.
Yeah.
So anyway, Vietnam, yeah.
Yeah.
Weekends
I
of
guess
Vietnam.
that was the highlight for me. And then did you guys feel like yours was different? What would you say your highlight was?
I think being able to show you around
Yeah.
in general was a highlight for me.
And I was really grateful for it. I don't know if I really highlighted that just
No,
because
you just tend to make
yeah,
fun
you're
of
like,
me
God,
and
this
you're
girl
like,
just
"Ugh,
comes and then
Yeah,
she eats
she's-
all of our food. And
damn it.
yeah.
She just sleeps all day."
But I definitely think that my experience going with you guys and already being, having gone to Vietnam helped out. Just because it was a culture shock. I haven't been to a country that different because there was a strong language barrier. And I I think that you guys definitely took the lead with certain things.
You guys, you mean Adrian?
No, Carl crossing the street.
Oh, okay.
Being the first one to get hit, right? So
Yeah,
you took the lead on
Oh,
that.
thanks,
Yeah. And then
thanks.
Adrian speaking or trying to speak their language or ordering just because I know nothing about Vietnamese food. It's crazy because we have such a good diverse ethnic food here in the Bay Area. And you think, oh yeah, I eat Vietnamese food. No, I just eat pho and spring rolls. There's more to Vietnamese food than just that. So having gone to Vietnam and their menus are, it doesn't have any English and I don't know any of the food. So it's like, I want that, but I don't know what I'm ordering.
Yeah. I think that's why that was a
yeah.
big, like, huge, memorable thing for me was
Yeah.
like trying to expose you to more Vietnamese food. Because to me, like, I think I've said this before, but like Vietnamese food is one of my favorite foods. Like
I didn't know that.
top 3, easily top 3. Pho is my
Yes.
most hated like food.
Yeah.
Like I don't like it. I
Yeah.
mean, I hate Filipino food more than I hate pho, but like pho is just my least favorite like
Yeah.
Of the
Vietnamese thing. Just because there's so much more. And I wish I could have taken you to like my like top of the list Vietnamese food like Hue, but we did eat at a place
Yeah.
with our good friend
Yeah.
where you could kind of experience some of that. And it's just, I think that for me is like, oh, I want her to eat this. I don't care if she doesn't like it, but I
Yeah.
want her to try it.
And I think that's the thing is that we're all very open to food. Because then I've never eaten so many snails before in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
And
I
speaking
haven't
of that, I don't really eat meat in general. So then going here, I was like, okay, sure, whatever it is, I'll eat it.
eaten- Yeah.
5
Which-
different types of snails I feel like we ate.
Yeah. Oh, there was a
big
ton.
ones.
The big
The big
ones.
ones.
The
There
big
was like
ones.
big ones. Then there was medium ones. Then there were cheesy ones. And then-
So great.
yeah. But anything else before we talk about our friend?
Oh,
Mhm.
yeah.
No, I think that was definitely the highlight. Although I will say generally, it's one of those things. It's like the day before you leave a place, I feel like is when all the best stuff surfaces. So like before we get to him, but like even on our very last day is when we ate like pizza 4 piece. Amazing, amazing, amazing.
You really
Italian
wouldn't
food.
think, yeah.
We saw it the first time we went to Hanoi and we thought it was just like a tourist restaurant because we're like, why would there be an Italian place here?
But our friend Duke also mentioned that how they have great pizza out there.
Mm-hmm. Well,
S-
yeah.
yeah, so I mean, we definitely experienced a great
Specifically.
pizza.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Specifically pizza 4Ps.
hmm
And
Shout
yeah,
out to those guys.
so they're amazing, and the service there is super great, and they're so eager to um, get feedback and continue to like progress, which is great because I feel like they're already succeeding. So the fact that they're still actively like requesting, surveys, like, oh, can you fill the survey out? Like, we want to know how we can be better. Can you please leave us a review? Like, that tells me like that's a good sign. Like, they're not just taking their success for granted and being like, okay, we're topping out here. Like, they're putting new stuff on their seasonal menu, and they're still growing, and they're still, So that was one thing. And of course, we had it like the day before we were going to leave. And we were like chatting up to the guy, and he was like, well, what time do you leave tomorrow? Maybe you can, like, no, we're like leaving before lunchtime, so we can't even squeeze you in.
Yeah,
Like,
of course we would find something great before we leave.
yeah. Or the little coffee shop. So there's like tons of coffee to be had in Hanoi. There's like literally no end. Like, you think we have enough Starbucks on every single corner here, but there's literally coffee everywhere. And it was just by chance that like, Carl was trying to find some specific Robusta beans instead of Arabica, that we were like hopping around these like different little cafes that were like small roasteries or whatever. And then like it was called Dream Beans Roastery. And we went to like the small little hole in the wall, like literally this little hallway. And it's like a coffee stand window almost. And it's their second location. They opened their flagship like last year. And then this one this year that we went.
It was a cute little
It was
alley, right?
so-
With, like,
yeah.
ugh. Yeah.
And the guy was so gracious, like just like, oh yeah, what are you looking for? Oh, this is how we have these so many different beans, and this is brewed and selected for this, blah 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 blah. So, and the whole time he's like trying to serve other people, but like not rushed. Like, his demeanor was super friendly, and even when we were like, oh, we didn't know you could do that, like, oh, we were hoping to do espresso, and he's like, well, typically, like, we would recommend this for the espresso, and this one we don't really use because it's so strong or whatever. But you can't, like, there was no snobbery in that. Like, you get a lot of times when you go to like a coffee shop and they're like, this is the only right way to do it. And if you're doing it the other way, you're wrong. And like, you just don't feel good about it. But he was like, he's teaching you in a very like humble way, and in a way that like recognizes you might have different preferences, which I think was key. And I was just like, God damn it, we're leaving tomorrow. Like, I want to come back. Yeah. And he was just like, oh, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I go serve this coffee? And like, I was like, dude, please
No, I
do
was like,
your
yeah,
job.
do
Like,
your
I'm
job,
sorry.
bro.
You're
Yeah.
working. Like, that he was like, still made us feel like a priority, even
Yeah.
though like we weren't, technically the one being served at the moment.
Yeah, we didn't get a coffee. We're literally just
To
going
buy
in
their
there,
beans.
buy a bag of beans, and get out. That was like a really good experience.
Yeah. So that was just super memorable, him and that and his little coffee window stand.
Yeah, I definitely think he was one of the best people we've encountered,
Mhm.
just because of how knowledgeable he is about his craft and how passionate,
Mhm.
but then and very respectful in how he educated us,
Mhm,
right?
mhm.
Because we were like, we're here for some robust beans,
Some
Robusta.
robusta,
robusta beans. Can we have the robusta
robustas.
beans?
But yeah.
Yeah. So I think those really stood out to me. And then of course just meeting Duke.
Yeah, are we on to Duke
so
now?
we are. So our buddy Duke,
Yeah.
which we happen like.
And I'm
so
sorry
how
if
do
I'm
you
saying
know?
it wrong again because
Duck-
it's been
Ducky,
a while.
let's call him Ducky.
Ducky.
He accepts Ducky, but I was like, the whole thing about Vietnam and this time coming back to it, for me at least, I was like, we know the language barrier is a huge factor, and I know it's a big variable in like connecting and like meeting someone and feeling engaged and feeling like, I actually like learned something and experienced something of Vietnam. So we were trying really hard to find somebody.
Oh, yeah, I was
Once we
asking.
decided that we were coming back to Vietnam, Carl was the first one who thought of doing this, which I was like, oh, that's really smart. I don't know why I didn't think.
Yeah,
Like-
I literally went through my contacts list, short of like texting my ex. Like,
Oh, that's how desperate you were.
we wanted
trying to
a
find
connection.
somebody.
We just needed a connection because
Yeah.
of how Bali was for us, like meeting Gusti and his
Yeah.
family, Japan, meeting a few people, and like now, like, you
It
know,
totally changes your
It
experience.
makes the biggest
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
And we spent, what, 2 days with him?
Yeah.
But those 2 days were such highlights of our trip.
yeah. Like, no joke, Duke made Vietnam.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
already
yeah.
was excited to
agree.
go for like the weekend, the thing, but I knew that it's like, shoot, we're there for like 7 days. The weekend only lasts like
A
3
weekend.
days, a weekend. So
Yeah. So
yeah, and I just started asking everyone, you know any Vietnamese people in Vietnam? You got family in Vietnam?
In
You got-
Hanoi specifically, yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
that's what I was asking
specifically
in
Hanoi.
Hanoi.
Yeah.
And I guess apparently a lot of my friends, they get family from
Yeah.
Saigon.
yeah, if this is something we also learned after the fact, because, but basically because of the Vietnam War and US's part and the whole thing about communism. And so South Vietnam, a lot of, because they fought with the US, they were given immigration opportunities. And so that's why basically almost everyone here in the US and their family is all related to South.
Yeah.
And so even though we asked everyone we knew, it was like everyone was like, yeah, no, we're like, but maybe the highest was like Hue, but that's mid Vietnam. So we're like, well, we're literally only going to Hanoi. So
And we
like,
kind of
we
have
really-
a contact in Da Nang.
yeah. But we were just like, okay, but we really were hoping to just have someone we can meet and like, share a meal with and then just see what happens.
So how'd you get
And
this contact?
It was like literally like almost a week before no, this is not that long. It was like a month before we were going, but it was already after you like exhausted your contact list. And I had already asked everyone.
people.
I'd even asked people like that I haven't talked to in years, but they were like my friends in middle school. And I was like, dude, I don't even know. And then so one of the last people I asked was an old coworker, Win, and he really graciously was like, well, I don't, but my mom might, because
Yeah.
she still actively travels back and forth. And so she happened to, and I was, first of all, I was like, oh, you don't have to ask your mom. I'm so sorry. Like,
Yeah, but I'm so glad you did. Thanks,
yes.
Win.
Yeah. Well, in our heads, it's like, I'll ask my mom kind of means, it might.
It may or may not mean anything, right?
Yeah.
But it just, and it was also just so happened that she had met someone that she had volunteered with in Da Nang, but he's from Hanoi. And then so they, provided the contact, and I reached out to him on Facebook. They gave him his like number and email, but I was like, I think Facebook is better because you can see that we're like you're the people in the photos, and you can kind of suss out if you want to know them or not.
Yeah. Because it's a gamble.
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You don't know who we're
so-
meeting.
Yeah, so we connected on Facebook, and I like browsed his feed and was like, wow, he's just like a lot of stuff. Like he's got that book, and I didn't realize that he had like written the book at the time, but and he's like, him playing piano on some video, and I was like, okay, like cool, like, and he was super gracious when we first initiated contact. He was like, oh yeah, like she gave me a call and told me that she was connecting us, like absolutely, like what are you interested in like experiencing here, and gave me this like super long list of restaurants and things to do and see. And then as it came down, he was like, oh, but I might not be in town the week that you're here, because he had a friend that was going to visit and they were going to go travel somewhere else. He was like, oh, but I can have my assistant help you during the weekend. I was like, don't make her do that. Like, please, like, that's not part of her job. Like, so I was just like, oh, that's fine. We'll just like connect closer to, no worries if not. And then, and like a week before, I was like, hey, so are you going to be in town, or can we grab a drink or something? Can we take you to dinner? And then he was like, oh, actually, yeah, my friend's trip got postponed, so I'll be around. And I was like, great. Sorry for your friend, but great.
But great for us. And to be honest, when Adrian told me like we're gonna go to dinner with our connection, and I was like, what did you call him initially? You said some term.
Or contact?
Contact. She said, yeah, we're going to go to
Very vague.
dinner with our contact. And I go, I don't want to go to dinner with a contact. Right? So
Contact.
I actually was going to opt out of it. But
Like, what are you, a secret agent?
Yeah, I was
Contact.
like, who's this contact? But it ended up being the best experience that we could. And learning from this trip, that's something that I want to do for every single trip, is trying to make some sort of connection with somebody who lives there.
Mhm.
Because then you see it from their eyes
Mhm.
and you experience it the way that they would experience it.
Mhm.
But let's talk about that restaurant, though.
Yeah.
That first night we met him.
Yeah. So we'll put the name of it because I'm not even going to try
Because
to
I can't even
butcher it.
remember.
Yeah. I mean,
No,
one,
we're-
can't remember,
we're-
and two,
We were
can't.
jokingly calling it QAnon.
Yes, that's right.
That's a terrible name.
not what I
It's like Quan something.
Don't butcher it. Let's just
but
see it.
We'll
see
put
it
it,
on
we'll
the-
put it in the thing. But terrible name. I remember. But yeah. So it's just this restaurant where, well, first let's talk about the restaurant, right?
Yeah.
It has a little bit of all kinds of Vietnamese food, which is perfect.
And the way he said it was, it's a combination of food from the north and the south.
100, yeah. Yeah, and it's like it covered all the ones that I wanted to share with you, like the bun bea, all the stuff from Hue, and yeah, and so usually when I go to places like this, I'm like very like
It might be touristy.
yeah,
Yeah.
either touristy or it's like they're not gonna
Overpriced.
overpriced. They're not gonna do like it's not really true or what you know what I mean. Like it's just fake. They
Yeah,
just
authentic.
yeah, it's not authentic kind of thing, but whatever, right? So we go in there, man. That stuff was hella tasty.
So
It was
good.
really tasty. And the thing is, it's like it's not just tourist. It's locals and tourists are there. It's like the place where families go.
And the way that and the
All
way that we
departed.
did it too is that we all just like basically sat down and we're like, Duke, whatever you want to order, we're
Order.
gonna eat it.
We
Yeah.
have no allergies. We don't. Yeah.
We're open to everything.
What was so funny was his first impression, or that first bit where he's like, well, you guys are American, right? So you guys can eat a lot. So we'll do many rounds. And we were like,
4 rounds, right? That's
yeah,
what
he was
said.
like,
Yeah.
we'll do 3 rounds of this and then 2 rounds of dessert. And we're just
Yeah.
like, let's just, we'll see. Just like,
For
And
me,
then-
no. I was like, yeah, let's make it 6.
Rachel, we're like, dude, you eat the least out of all
I
of us.
know. That was what I was saying. I was like, you haven't eaten anything. I was like, where is this coming from? Like,
It's what he said is it's the environment,
Yeah,
right? You're
yeah.
in an environment where
you
people
out ate me. I'll say that. You out ate me
Yeah.
that night.
Can you believe that?
No, ever. I can't.
It happened though.
We're gonna-
I out ate him.
and yeah, and so he ordered a lot of stuff.
Yeah, good variety of options.
They ran out of the bunseo, though. that
Yeah,
day.
I was really sad about that.
But I think that's because it's one of their showier pieces, so a lot of people get it. And it might also be a little bit more known, familiar to like tourists, I think.
Mhm.
And you know, I just thought it was kind of great to not have to order
Mhm.
for a while
Mhm.
for me.
Because Adrian was ordering the entire trip. Adrian, what are we gonna
And
get?
then so it was just nice to have somebody else like take the reins and kind of be like, okay, like can we do this and this and this and this and whatever. And then the couple next to us too, which
Yeah.
they were from Singapore.
But I think
And-
he's from somewhere else originally.
Yeah. I forgot where, but
Yeah.
but and they were just like having a great time, thoroughly entertained watching our table, and yeah, it was. Food was getting out of hand, but it was all delicious and
Just a little bit with
definitely-
our 4 rounds.
Yeah.
and we definitely could not finish all the food, but everything was delicious. And it actually, though, we had been to the restaurant before because it was one that Irene had recommended to us.
Yeah, but when I asked her about it, she was like, I don't
It was
remember.
marked as
Yeah.
that, though, and there was no one else we would have asked.
On your
My-
previous trip? you
Yeah,
guys
so
Yeah.
I asked
Oh.
Yeah.
because I was marked on our thing that says Irene said to eat here.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Right. So then
had
I
to be.
texted Irene. Right. I was like, hey, you told us to eat here, right? And she was like, no.
I never
don't
said
know.
that.
I never said that.
I had to.
And then when we post that we ate there, she's like, oh, that's a really good place. I was like,
Irene.
oh my gosh.
Irene.
Irene, I'm looking at you, man. What the heck? But thank you.
But yeah, so we had been there before, but of course, obviously, this was such a different experience.
So when we went to the restaurant, did it kind of hit you guys that you?
I said that to him, and he's like, I don't know if we did. I was like, it
couldn't.
looks familiar. I think we did.
Because it's very.
But we went during like lunch, and it was a lot quieter, and it was
Oh.
not at night it's so busy, it feels very festive.
I
The
also
energy's
think
different.
we went to a different location.
Oh, cool. Yeah, they have many locations. There's like 3 or 4.
Yeah, and
that's
so
probably why.
I think it didn't hit me. Even the setup, because the other location had the same setup too, or like the pictures, it looked like it did, but I just couldn't remember at all. I think it's just because Irene said that she didn't tell us to eat there, so I was like, oh, we probably didn't eat there then. Wasn't her. So another Irene I don't know.
Yeah.
So I erased it from my memory. Irene. but yeah, no, it's a great place. Thanks, Duke. Not Irene.
Yeah. So our experience was super, super different with him. And I think it was also just because he's really good at talking and speaking and has such like an engaging personality. So it was like right when we met, all of us were like, is this going to be awkward or not? But it wasn't. And it was like right away, like you guys were able to talk and he was just super like, oh yeah, like feel free to like walk around and just like look at everything.
And that's the nice thing about that restaurant was the stations too.
He was so like warm off the bat. Like, yeah, I think this is why like there didn't need to be an icebreaker. He was just very warm and welcoming as if we knew him for the longest time already. It was just something about him. And then, once we got to know him, it was just like, dude, this guy is super talented.
Yeah.
Really like he's somebody, right? And like we kind of, it's
Kept
just peeling the
that.
onion, right? And then as the more we get to know him, right? And even the second day, we're just like, yo, this guy feels like a big deal.
Yeah.
Very
like,
humble about it.
You're going to be famous someday.
Yeah. Not someday. He's almost there. Like, I mean, let's just talk about him real quick, like what he does, like his books, right? So he writes children's books that kind of expands on current stories or stories that are like
existing like myths and folklore. And what's really beautiful is that he's sort of identified issues that are that he has or that maybe generally there are in Vietnamese culture, and he sort of identified, because we have these beliefs, these like really, really old stories that are part of our culture that are taught in schools, and therefore these ideas are perpetuated through society. And so he's identified that as a problem and then been like, well, if we rewrite the story, we could change the mentality.
And it's not necessarily rewriting though. It's just kind of
like
expanding,
a
spin-off, not totally rewriting,
because he's expanding the story that's already
or like he continued
existing.
like a story of the
sure
to give his own lesson in which it doesn't have any negative part of how the original one is.
Right. But one of his books will like, I guess he not turned it into, but like showed a school or something like that. I totally forgot. Like he showed a school, and then it's one of the main textbooks.
Like 1,000 kids,
or something like that. And it's like, this is now a textbook story. Like it's for little kids, right? But it's a main book that they teach or they read to the kids or have the kids study or whatever. And like we have the book, and we're just like, yo, that's such a good. Like it's a legit book. Like I wouldn't. He's like, I feel like he's the first person we know that's like somebody.
Definitely.
not to insult all the people that we know, but
so I'm not somebody. No, just kidding.
But it's one of those things where it's like, somebody who's doing something, who's very actively like. Not just someone says they believe something, but someone who's actively doing something about what they believe, or
like changing the world, like actually
influencing the world. Yeah.
Especially starting with that young population, right?
The children are our future.
Yeah, and that's one of the things he kept saying is plant that seed.
Yeah.
And he even gave us a seed too, just because the children are seeds that you need to grow and nurture.
Yeah.
So that's our friend too.
He's somebody. Plays piano, plays guitar,
ping pong.
Yeah, and he'll steal your heart on the weekend.
You're like, is this a profile you're setting up for him?
His Tinder app.
But even that, like, so we had the dinner with him. It was really fun. You know, we didn't want the night to end. We went to go to a bar. Again, getting to know him. He doesn't drink, so we kind of felt kind of bad. But you know, it didn't bother him that we were drinking though. You know, we were just like continuing the conversation, getting to know him a lot more, and then we started to plan to see him again, right? And which was really good because then we could get out of Hanoi, right? And kind of see the suburb, I guess you could call it.
Just quieter,
Yeah, and it's just this place that you don't even realize exists outside of Hanoi, because you go to Hanoi
that you don't expect in Vietnam.
You just don't expect, just based off Hanoi, or like even just the main cities that you travel to, like Saigon, Hanoi, Hue, Da Nang, and you just don't think that this is there. So, do you remember the
Ocean Park?
Ocean Park. So this is where the area that he's in, and he was just explaining it to us before we've even seen it. He's like, "Oh, I got these fake beaches and stuff like that." I couldn't.
That's how he sold it. Come see the fake beach.
Yeah.
But he described it very aptly. He was sort of like, it's kind of like Singapore, and then we were like, actually, it did have Singapore vibes.
Yeah.
Which was really interesting, and the main thing was just that. I think that he was because when we met him in Hanoi, and then we didn't realize that he wasn't actually living in Hanoi, and he had traveled quite a distance to come see us. So we were like, oh, okay, next time we hang out, like, you know, he was telling us about the area he lives and the fake beach, and he was showing us pictures, and it was great. But we were like, oh, we can come to you if you don't mind hosting us. And he was like, yeah, like, let me show you. And it was like the weirdest, unexpected experience to have. I think going to Vietnam was like to go to Ocean Park, which was one thing, to just leave Hanoi and like get away from all of that. And he was saying, you know, like, 'cause there's a lot of pollution, a lot of noise, and it's just like really hectic there, which is true. That's what we were thinking of Vietnam anyways. And then to end up in this essentially suburb area where it was just like silent. It was
so
like,
quiet.
So weird.
You have that honking, the constant honking.
Yeah. There was some, just not.
Not the
constant,
same. Yeah.
And it's just like this nice area. There's more apartment buildings being built. There are houses in these like really nice units being built. It's right next to a college, you know. All the restaurants were like really nice and stuff. And that's where we ate a crap ton of snails. Yeah. Big snails, small cheesy snails, everything, you know. And him, you know, taking us around these fake beaches, you know, is just nice. And that night. And then just going back to his place. We just hung out. We just hung out more. Every time we like hung out with him, we just didn't want the time to end. Is what it felt like.
I think when we went back to his place and, you know, learning a new language, of course, the one thing that you have to do is teach the bad words. But I thought that was the best part, because literally every time he would listen to Carl say it, it would make him laugh so much.
But it was like he would translate, because we were talking about his children's book, right?
Okay, yeah. Children's book in bad languages.
Yeah. And he would translate it for us, or just tell us the meaning of all the pages, go page by page.
Yeah.
We were like recording it so I can...
Yeah, it's like story time is great.
So I can like, you know, memorize it and tell like my nephew. And then I guess we take a break between books, right? And then, he starts teaching us like bad words. So it's such a contrast, but it was like the funniest thing ever.
It was because we noticed that he would swear kind of more often than expected, because you're like, oh, he's this guy that's like, you know, God, he's like so good, right? And it's just weird that of all the vices, right? He's like, oh, he doesn't do this, and he's changing the world, but he likes to swear. And then so I think I made a comment about it.
Swear. He just
does. Well, I mean,
he doesn't like to swear.
I mean, nobody but you know, and he was just like, oh yeah, of course. And then I think that sparked the conversation about about
I think
swear
you
words.
asked him something about that,
because I was saying like, oh, I commented on it. He's like, oh, I get that a lot. Like people are always surprised that I do, but I'm not a saint. And I was like, I mean, everything else
Compared
is,
to me, shoot.
but yeah, that it was just like a very jarring thing to kind of, but you're right. Like he was like cracking up so hard.
Yes.
It was great.
Why was he laughing so much? Because it just sounded so on
He
point.
said,
Is
he
that what
said
it
it's
was?
very like good pronunciation.
But also too, he wanted you to kind of just say it like in
like
your
it was hello.
yeah, like it's hello
Oh, because
or like
they were
thank
joking
you.
about it, like because they were like, "Oh, yeah, great. Now we can go, go around saying it." It would be
Yeah.
like,
Yeah,
"Oh,
yeah. As a
like,
thank you,
yeah,
like
like-
say
Yeah.
thank you.
yeah." Instead of being
Instead of
like,
like, come on.
come on, like, "Oh, this is tasty, right?" And then it was like, "Oh," but then if you throw in some other word, then they're
Yeah,
gonna be like,
instead of
"What?"
saying,
It's like a
"Come on,"
surprise,
you
like,
just
whoa,
"Oh."
what?
Yeah, it's like you get your food, or it's like after like we check in, and we'll just be, "Oh, did me?"
Yeah, you still remember
Heck
it.
yeah, I remember it.
Children, please don't
Yeah,
repeat
do not.
that.
This is not safe.
Well, no, we're gonna mark this one as explicit.
Yeah.
You're gonna put a bleep in there.
Yeah, we should. But no, it was just fun, and then that's not the reason why he made our I know. It was just his vibes in general. And I think
Yeah.
it just the concept of having a contact or a connection in wherever you travel to, I think makes the vacation much better.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it's nice to have family time and this and that, but it'd be great if like our thing is immersion, right? We want to experience. I mean, obviously, day-to-day stuff. Like, if you think about it, like our day-to-day stuff, we're just gonna have someone hang out in this room with like our dog while we
Teach them the bad words.
Watch
Teach them the bad. No, just
watch Spanish Netflix and like
Spanish Netflix.
and do like video editing. I'm like, that's kind of boring. But like, you do want to show them your city's highlights
Yeah.
from your view, right? And I think he did that very well.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah, or even playing ping pong.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Man, I totally
And
forgot
then
about
having those other people come and join us. I was like, I'm not
Yeah.
good enough to play with you guys.
that. Yeah.
Well, as you can see how friendly people are, right? You're just gonna go inside. So there was a ping pong area. There were other like
Ping pong,
volleyball,
badminton,
yeah.
basketball, like
Yeah.
courts on courts on courts. There's so many.
Honestly, if we met him a little bit earlier on the trip, I feel like we would have had more days with him.
I think
Oh,
we
yeah,
would have
probably.
we would
Spend
have
every day
just-
with him.
No. We would have just had an Airbnb.
Yeah,
Closer to him.
Yeah,
I think even if he wasn't available, like I mean, you kind of still need a key or
Yeah.
like key card access to these. But
Well,
the
you're supposed to
area-
reserve the badminton court and everything.
Yeah.
That's
which
what he
he
said.
did. Yeah.
Yeah.
But then for people to come in and then just we're all kind of playing with one another, it was
Yeah.
a nice experience because he even told us afterwards, he was like, "Oh, I played with them again after
Yeah,
we
like
left."
they joined.
Oh,
yeah,
the
yeah.
guy
They have
who was
like a
hella
club
good?
or something.
There was a ping pong like group
Yeah.
in which Duck was like, "Oh yeah, I wouldn't mind joining that or participating in it."
Yeah.
And then he ended up playing with them again.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the taller guy that was playing, he's part of the badminton group.
yeah.
'Cause
He was
later
just
that night-
early
Yeah.
for badminton practice.
and wanted
or
to
whatever.
play it, but then the other guy who was like hell
Yeah,
good
yeah.
at ping pong.
He made it look so easy.
Yeah, like nothing, like, and the ball would just like.
He's not even
spin.
looking
He's
at
like-
it.
he's like, these guys are children. Nah, he was so good, but it was just fun. Like those, you really can't get that at a tour package.
No.
You know what I mean? So yeah, that's those are memories you can't buy a ticket
Yeah.
for, right? So
Yeah. No, you can't. And I think that's like the lesson we've learned in traveling was just always like, you really need to like, I mean, you can't expect people to come to you. So it's really important to make yourself like take the initiative, whether it's like, okay, like doing pre-travel arrangements to like find a connection, and maybe for some people like that you can't find an actual connection, like some of those smaller tours are really good to do, like that, like Airbnb experiences or something where you're like more one-on-one and the person is not like necessarily a professional tour guide, but they're just like taking you around to show you like their favorite things.
there's a lot of those like
Yeah, there's
night
more-
food tour, drink
Yeah.
tour, coffee tour kind of things.
And I think those are starting to grow in in popularity and availability. And I think those are good opportunities if you don't have like your own person to like get to know. And then it's also really just like leaving yourself really open to the opportunities that come.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, like, cause we traveled so much that other year and we just didn't do that. We weren't like willing to like, you know, take the step to initiate or to like engage somebody or to like put ourselves out there, you know.
It's a risk.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like you go into this experience and you don't know if you're going to bond with that person or not. But thankfully he just had such a welcoming personality that it was easy to, you know, enjoy his presence.
Yeah. Yeah. I was like, we were literally like our last full day was with him that last night. And we were just like, man, okay, like I guess we should head home soon because we gotta leave.
Yeah.
But yeah, not to end his but we did forget something else that we did in Hanoi. Which was also great, but not as memorable, I guess.
Him and I are like, what is it? Oh, it was so great.
We ate. There was the weekend thing.
It's something we ate.
Snails.
No, wait, sorry. What was it?
What did we eat?
Really don't remember?
It was so great, and we ate something really great.
We ate something. It was a dining experience.
Oh! How
can we? Because Duke was so important to us.
Holy moly!
And this is huge. Look at me readjusting my seat. I am a terrible cook, chef, eater. Like, ugh, I hate calling myself a chef.
That's so funny that you remember that. We totally forgot.
Even before we started this, I was just like, oh, make sure to talk about it.
Well, we got wrapped up in our reminiscing.
This was kind of, this is a good kind of conclusion to it all, though.
Yeah, I mean, Duck just has that power, man.
Yeah, forget about this fine dining experience that we had.
Influential for my life as well.
So let's talk about it. Tongue
dining. So the reason why I wanted you to come mainly as well is because I know your birthday is in October, and you are very much like a sister to me.
Aww.
Especially when you visit us in Bali. You're the only one to come out and visit us, and that means a lot to like me and to both of us.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to, I mean, even though you said you don't really do very like many fancy dinners or anything, I was like, okay, why not? Like, let's just go for it. We wanted to do a fancy dinner, and I wanted to tell them that it was your birthday, right? And so tongue dining, I remember watching this thing on YouTube that I'm subscribed to, is like 50 best restaurants or top 100, whatever, in Asia. And so they're basically the only ones top 50. And holy shit, like, they're really good.
Yeah.
Tongue dining, like, really make a reservation right now if you're there. But I forgot how many courses it was.
20.
Was it 20?
I don't know if it was 20, but it was definitely more than 10. So
yeah.
But it was basically from the get-go, like they styled everything after sort of the Scandinavian, you know, I mean, everyone takes inspiration from places like Noma and stuff, but I think they did it in a very like elegant way and not like overly like trying to be something it's not.
Right. But that's what the Chef Tung, like, he has background in working at these like high-end restaurants like in Europe. And so he brought that over, and I like, man.
And then it's his take on
Vietnamese food specifically, right? Like how, like incorporating that modern type of cuisine and just like gastronomic kind of things, and making like that pho, right? Like we had I don't even know how to explain it anymore, man. Like,
it's a foot by the foot roll that you roll up. That's basically the pho broth.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. I mean, it was just it was like delightful. The presentations were really beautiful and like engaging.
But I mean, so the menu does change every season.
Seasonal,
right? So we'll just put the food at like, it was food-wise, it was an amazing experience, right? But that's not technically what won us over, really. It was part of it, but not one of like it was like 40% of it, I would say. 60% was the service.
Yeah.
Right? Like with every dish, they would explain to you very clearly what it was. They would also, because obviously they know that there's a language barrier, or maybe there isn't, but still, like, they give you a card that they make, like, think Pokemon cards, but like each dish had their own freaking card. And they would put it on the thing so you can like really, really get to know what you're eating. And I think having like them doing that versus there are times where waiters come and it's like, oh, you're going to have this is the blah, 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 blah. And you're at a high end restaurant, like, okay. He just walks away 2 steps and you're like, what the hell did he just say? Even if it's like clear, like English, you're just like, I don't know what to, and then you just eat it. There's no, oh, this was tasty. That's pretty much the only connection you have to the food. But this is totally different because it's like you're eating the food, you're reading this card, and you're like, wow, that's what it is. And then their explanation is not necessarily what's on the card.
The card has more background
of the history of that dish or the inspiration of that dish. But that person was like, the waiter is explaining like how they made it. And I feel like there's a lot of restaurants that don't do that. They'll just say, pomegranates with
Now enjoy. Bon appetit.
Yeah, that's literally it. But there's like, oh, we even do this to this. So how we make this cocktail is like, you know, and it wasn't just at
the
food.
cocktails too.
It was the cocktails, which is
so innovating.
It was next door to Tongue Dining, right? It's their cocktail bar. And they did the same exact thing. We didn't have cards on this one, but I mean, maybe at their bar they do.
Yeah, but the fact that they come and I've never seen anyone do that with drinks.
Drinks, yeah. I don't know,
to like explain what the drink is and how they came about, like what is happening in the drink, you know, and I'm like, this is amazing.
Even though we've had one of the drinks before, they still came to the table and still wanted to talk to us about it.
Yeah,
and elaborate even more on it. Too.
Yeah, and it was like, oh yeah, this one, it's like we have to make it like ourselves. We have to carbonate it, and then if something happens to it, then we have to start the whole process over. So it's very hard to make and this and that. Telling us their process of how to make these cocktails or these like ingredients of the cocktail itself. They do the same thing with the dishes. And I just thought like that's the service. That's like, that's what wins. Like that's how you get like Michelin stars and stuff like that. That's crazy. The food, of course, has to be good. And the food was great, but man, the service is just
over the edge.
Yeah, and also a lot of them were quite young, so it was really impressive that they're at this caliber. And of course, like we were one of the last people to leave, and then when we were walking through the kitchen, and they were so willing to do it. I was like, "Can we take a picture together?" They were just like, "Yeah." I was like, "Oh,
and these are like cooks that just put out. Yeah, it's a smaller setting. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing to take away from like the work that they do because it's multiple dishes, right? Like there's courses, I mean, and the stuff that they put out has to be done at such a high like technical like it's just so skillful how they do it. How their execution is just ridiculously good to be the last ones out, and then as a cook they still have that smell. They're still warm. They you know like yeah, that's crazy. Like after a day's, I mean, I don't have experience at that high caliber. Maybe they're just really good at prepping ahead of time, and they're just so solid with how they build stuff, whatever, right? Whatever the excuse is. Even thinking about it, I don't think I'd have that. I'd be like, I'm tired.
You don't want to take a picture with you guys.
Go home. Yeah, sure, we can take a picture. That would be like
all of them were like, we'll take a picture.
Yeah, and then they all like pop their mask down and check it. It was like so sweet. And then they walked us, we were walked out as well. And then she asked us to like, you know, like this was like the checkout process. Like, what did you think? Like how, you know, basically what were your favorite dishes, anything you didn't like. So this idea that, you know, there's so much willingness to learn and improve and progress. I think that's a quality that really always strikes us is like people who always want to get better. Like you're not settling. You're like, and you're proactively, you know, asking for critiques. Like not everyone can handle that. Like, you know, so I think it really speaks volumes when people are like, hey, give me feedback.
Yeah.
Like I want to be better. I want to be better than this.
Yeah.
If you think this is great, you know, they're like, even if you're like, oh my God, everything was amazing. They're like, yeah, but isn't there anything you don't like?
What would you change?
Yeah.
though?
What would you
Yeah.
change? Like, you know,
Yeah.
that's super impressive.
Yeah.
And definitely have to go back. That's definitely something we go
Yeah.
back
Especially
to.
And the
too, it'll
cocktail
be a
bar.
different season, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So then
New
it'll be
menu.
a whole nother menu that we haven't experienced before.
Yeah. We'll request the same table and everything.
Uh-huh.
And then say it's someone else's birthday.
Well, we should go in a different, so that a different season would have a different menu.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that was just, in general, like such a amazing trip, really, with so many like highlights, so many memorable things.
Yeah.
And
I mean, this trip, you know, we made one promise to like ourselves on this trip was to do things that we didn't get to do on our trip, on our year-long trip, because we visited Vietnam in like maybe halfway through our trip. And so it's like, there are things that you can't, it's hard to like buy something or go to, or you're trying to save a little money because you still have 6-7 months of your trip. So there's just things that we couldn't do. And this time it's like, you know, I think we did a good job of like trying to do things that were just not what we usually did. And that's because of you too.
yeah.
So, okay, bye.
Bye bye.
Okay, bye.
Any, out of all the things we talked about, what would be the one thing you would tell people to do in Hanoi?
Go look up Duke. That's the thing. Go look up Duke because he's going to elevate your experience in Vietnam, in Hanoi
Teach you some
specifically.
words.
No, like I had reiterated, making a connection really, just because then it's the local experience versus the tourist view set. Right?
Yeah.
So I definitely, on every trip, I would want to try to do something like that.
Nice.
Well, I guess that pretty much wraps up our wonderful
Vietnam.
vacation of Vietnam with Rachel. So hopefully you'll come on more
On our next trip.
on our next trip. Yeah.
On my next breakup. Just kidding.
But yeah, so that was fun.
Thanks so much for sticking around and listening all the way through.
Yep.
We'll put a bunch of notes and stuff.
Descriptions. If you're watching this on YouTube, hopefully you enjoyed the little slideshow. If you're not, you're just listening to it. Go check out our slideshow and check out our YouTube channel and all our socials and Rachel's socials. We'll put it on there, you know,
Which is non-existent.
which doesn't have very much. But
Give us a thumbs like if you want to hear more of Rachel.
Yeah.
See
Like
more.
you want
and
her back.
subscribe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll catch you guys on the next one.
Bye.